Hello, my name is Putkonen. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm talking about living in don't know mind. Don't know mind is kind of just a different take on no mind, but don't know mind was the term that I think it's Sung Song. He was a Korean Zen master. Ended up writing "Dropping Ashes on the Buddha." Um, his big focus was don't know mind, and kind of similar to an earlier video when I was talking about living without a destination in mind. Another attitude or just way of living that we can adopt is don't know. Don't know can just be the fundamental set and kind of a reminder of sorts. And what I mean by this is we need to let go of our concepts, let go of knowledge during just day-to-day life in general. For example, you see the plant. Well, maybe you know what type of plant it is, and so you're like, oh, I know it's this kind of plant, and it likes this kind of watering and weather and all these concepts, just everything, just spewing about this instead of just looking at the plant. Our concepts, our memories, our knowledge almost veil what we're seeing. Kind of like what Eckhart Tolle talked about when he said, you could be having breakfast with your spouse one morning and realize you haven't seen them in years. Because you have this, I know them. I know who they are. I know what they're about. I know everything about them. And so you no longer really look at them. You no longer see them. You no longer open to the changes that have happened. Instead, you're living based upon the self-image, the memories and knowledge you have of them, not who they are at this point in time, which could be different. And so kind of adopting the don't know mind would be to adopt this I don't know, whatever you encounter, particularly say people you know very well or things that you know very well. You adopt the standpoint, I don't know. You give up or let go of all the knowledge and you treat it as if you've never seen this before. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what this thing is. So I'm going to really look at it and learn about it. Because learning fundamentally requires an empty cup. This is a very classic parable where somebody went to a Zen master and was spouting upon what they knew about Zen, and he just kept pouring tea into this cup until it's overflowing and flooding all over. And the guy goes, "What are you doing? The cup's full, it's flooding all over." And he goes, "How can I tell you anything when your cup is so full?" And so learning fundamentally comes down to having an empty cup, not knowing. If we already know, it's very difficult to learn anything about it. It's very difficult to learn anything new. Particularly if what we think we know is actually wrong or not quite right. It's particularly interesting because then, let's say, the more accurate representation or truth is presented, it may not be recognized or even, it may be avoided or pushed away because you know what they are, you know what it is. You don't need to be told or shown otherwise. And so we resist learning something that might be contrary or slightly different. And so learning is deeply involved, or it requires a don't know, an openness. I don't know, and so I am open to learning. And adopting a don't know standpoint in life makes life much more wondrous. There's wonder and there's curiosity. I mean, if you know what it is, backwards and forwards, you're not curious about it at all, nor is it wondrous in any way. You don't have a wonder about it. Wonder is somewhat related to mystery. It requires a certain amount of unknown to have wonder. The biggest feelings of wonder comes on when you don't know it all. And so when you have this attitude, or you adopt this philosophy of don't know, and you give up on concepts, you give up on knowledge, you are living with much more curiosity, and you find much more wonder. I think it was Meister Eckhart that said, to the quiet mind, all things are possible. It is thought, it is our minds that tell us what is impossible. We're constantly, it's impossible, this is impossible. But to the quiet mind, or the don't know mind, no mind, there is infinite possibility. Things aren't as stuck in track, so to speak. There's possibilities. So often we're trapped by what we know, and what we know isn't exactly accurate. I mean, how many stories or movies have you seen about somebody that accomplished the impossible? You know, they did something, they achieved something, and to a certain extent of it, if the person was, I know this isn't possible, this is impossible, they would have never really tried. I think a common element with a lot of these stories is they had I don't know that it's impossible. I don't know. And so there was a possibility. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna see what happens. And so there's more possibility. And then you may find that what you thought was impossible wasn't entirely impossible. In the book Dropping Ashes on the Buddha, he mentioned that if you have a completely don't know mind, confusion does not arise. There is no confusion. So that's another benefit. It's because so many people come to me and say, oh, I'm confused. All this is very confusing. Well, that's because you're trying to rectify information with what you know. You're trying to rectify new information with what you think you know, and so there's confusion. And then you're trying to know. You're striving to know, and so there's this feeling of confusion. But if you let all that go and adopt the philosophy or the standpoint of don't know, I don't know, and just abide in don't know, there's no confusion. And in that don't know, there's a much easier possibility to see what is as it is. Because instead of looking at what you know, the concepts in your head, you're actually just looking and seeing. And it is as it is, whatever is seen. When there's no concept, when there's no thought, when there's no label. It is as it is. And this is easiest to see in don't know. Because as I said earlier, your knowledge, what you think you know, becomes a blinder. It doesn't really let you see something else. It's like, I know this. Well, the way the mind works is it does everything to reinforce that. And so it will overlook, explain away, or otherwise dismiss anything contrary to what it thinks it knows. And if that is not quite accurate, you'll be overlooking everything showing that that isn't accurate and it could be otherwise. And so it's advantageous in learning and being flexible and and just having a curious or feeling of wonder in the world to have a don't know standpoint. Because in don't know, you are totally now. If you're deep in don't know mind, there's just now. I don't know. I don't know what this is, but it is. And so you're just aware and looking and seeing. Simple as that. But when you're going from what you know, you're touching upon knowledge. And all knowledge is of the past. It's not now. It's of the past. And so all the knowing is just past. You're just constantly looking at past, past, past. You're not really looking at now. You're going based on knowledge, which is of the past. And so to give up this and just abide and don't know is to actually become much more present. To not refer to the past, what I think I know. Instead, you're just looking and learning and gaining direct understanding now. It's kind of like, if you encounter something you maybe seen a million times, a tree in your yard or whatever, and you've taken care of it, you've studied it, you've seen it many times, you think you know everything about it. There gets to be the point where you cease looking at it. And something could have changed. There could have been a bug, a disease, some rock could be getting into it, and you're not really seeing it anymore. You're not even looking. And so you haven't noticed what changed. Because the now is ever changing. Nothing is static. It's constant change. And fundamentally, you can't step into the same piece of water twice. Classic Zen phrase when someone's stomping into a river. You can't step on the same piece of water twice. It's constantly moving. And so it's not the same. And as it's not the same, you've never encountered this before. And so it would be wiser to approach it from don't know. I don't know. And so I'm going to look and I'm going to see. And so, these are the various, advantages to adopting a don't know philosophy or standpoint of life or an attitude, just going, I don't know. Because if you're just sitting and don't know, particularly about who and what you think you are, because much of spirituality and in particular non-duality is about the self. And we have so much of what we think we know about ourselves. We don't know. That's the attitude. I don't know who and what I am. Now, if you're particularly attached to some aspect, this is where neti or some other practices I've mentioned come into play, where you may observe, investigate, and otherwise delve into whatever you think and feel yourself to be until you see you're not that. You see the false is false. And at some point, you'll reach the point while you're looking for the me somewhere that you come down to, I don't know. I don't know who and what I am anymore. I can't find it. I don't know. And that's the gateway, so to speak. That is the place to abide. Just don't know. I don't know who and what I am. I don't know my spouse, so I meet her anew. I meet him anew. Find out who they are now. Same with your children. This is kind of an all-encompassing philosophy, really. Is you can just sit with don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Who am I? What am I? Don't know. What happens after death? Don't know. It's what's gonna happen if I put in all this effort at work? Don't know. You can play with this a bit, and it's kind of interesting for the very intellectual. It is actually a almost better practice because there was a TV series that I really liked. Came out of Turkey. It was called Yunus Emre Journey of Love, and it was all about Yunus Emre, who was kind of a contemporary of Rumi, but he was a dervish and a poet, and but he originally went to school and became a qadi, which is kind of a judge for Sharia law. And after all this schooling and everything else, he had a lot of pride in being very educated and very smart. And as the story goes, eventually he ends up joining this dervish lodge, and the sheikh, the leader of the lodge, says, "Well, I must give you a task," and because they'll give him kind of a task and sometimes spiritual practices to do. And he said, your task is whenever you're asked a question or asked your opinion, you must answer, "I don't know." And for someone that puts so much into their knowledge and learning, and look at all this that I have, it's so much more than everybody else, I really know. To have to answer "I don't know" to any question, no matter how simple, whether he knew the answer or not, just say "I don't know." It is humbling. It just corrodes. It devastates the ego of a very intellectual person to have to go with this. So I'm fully aware that some viewers, there might be an inner, there's just no way, because there might be this attachment to what is known, your intellect. It's like, it is a great thing to have all this stuff. What do you mean, toss it all out? I'm just saying, approach life, people, things from a don't know standpoint. Really look at what is. Really see. It's not the same. It's never the same. You leave the room, you come back. The person is not the same. So adopt don't know. I don't know this person. And so there's a curiosity. And you get to know them. You see them. And that is just a different way of living. So I mean, it's a potential attitude of life. But like I said, it has a lot of potential benefit. I mean, all throughout the video, I'm talking about all the various benefits. There's a lack of confusion. There's an increase in curiosity. There's an increase in wonder. Increase of flexibility in learning. There's, there's all this stuff that comes with adopting a don't know. But a don't know mind is a not thinking mind. You're not thinking. You're not bringing up all these concepts. You're not bringing up all these labels. You're not bringing up past knowledge. You're not bringing up memory. You're not. You're basically letting all this go. And if it does arise, well, that's fine. But you're just, in a way, dismissing it. You're basically going, yeah, that's the past. but I don't know now. I don't know now, and so I'm going to look because I'm curious about it, what it is now, which isn't the same as the last time I encountered it. Because the wonder, the awe, is so much easier if there's a don't know. I mean, think about children. They, we're born not really knowing anything. We know very little. And the world is so wondrous and full of awe. And we always say children are so naturally curious. Well, why is this? Because they don't know. They don't know. And so they're naturally curious. And there's a sense of wonder and awe in the world and how great it is. This is lost because of all we know. Everything we think we know. Because our attitude with things we know is totally different. The way we relate to something we know is not the same we relate to something we don't know. And so there is advantages, benefits to, even if you know something, to let all that go and act as if you don't know. And so when you act as if you don't know, which means you're not really minding any of the thoughts, if you're still thinking, if you're able to just have a silence of mind and no mind, all the better. But if thoughts are arising, just don't pay them any mind. Go, it's all past. It's all past. It's not now. I don't really care. I'm curious about now. I don't know. Because there's this ever-present, never-ending not knowing. I mean, self-realization is an interesting thing in that, at times I've described it as more about dispelling who and what you think you are rather than seeing what you are. Because you never go, that's what I am. That's what I am right there. I see it now. It never works that way. What you are never becomes an object of awareness. So you never know it by seeing it as a separate object. And in that way, the self is I mean, you could say you know the self, but if somebody goes, well, then what is the self? I don't know. At the same time, there's a don't know. So this gets very Zen-ish. If somebody goes, who are you? What are you? If you say you know, you get struck. If you say you don't know, you get struck. Because it's not either one. To know the self is also not knowing the self in terms of a not knowing. It never becomes a concept. Because knowing, as I've been talking about knowing through this entire video, is about concept. To know means to have a concept. I've got a concept of who my wife is or husband is and everything about them. And so I'm looking at the concept. I'm not looking at them. I know what this plant is, and so I'm looking at the concept. There's the label. It's a palm, this kind of palm, yada yada. So you're looking at the concept. You're not actually looking at the plant. And so when it comes to the self, you never get to see the self as an object, but also the self never becomes a concept. The self never becomes a concept. It never becomes something the mind can grasp. And in this way, you don't know the self because it's not a concept. The mind doesn't get it. Knowing the self, another way of talking about knowing, is not about the mind. It's about being. There's being the self. That's how you know the self. just as I've described in another video, that it's like seeing, how does the eye know itself? Well, the eye never sees itself. And so the eye knows itself by the very act of seeing. The self knows itself by the very act of being. We are. And so you know the self. And so you can't say you don't know the self. If somebody goes, well, I don't know the self. What is the self? Bang. Because you are. Of course you know the self. You are. How can you deny you don't exist? You know the self. But then if somebody goes, I know the self, as in terms of a concept, bang. No, that's not the self. That's why you get hit either way. If in Zen, a Zen master goes, who are you? Do you know the self? Yes, bang. No, bang. Either answer gets a hit. And so, as I said, don't know is the gateway. Because now you've cleared all the concepts, you've cleared all the past knowledge, the memories, and you can actually see what is as it is. You could see it as it is. Anyways, if you got any questions, comments, please post below. If you like the video, please share, subscribe. But until next time, thank you much.